Hi everybody, this is Sue Reynolds with the American Student Achievement Institute, and this webinar is for school steering teams that are participating in redesigning school counseling. And the focus of this webinar is preparation. This is kind of an exciting webinar. It's our last webinar of the year. Your plan is all developed, and now we're getting ready to make sure that that plan gets off of paper and into practice. So we'll begin. So here's our agenda for today. We'll start out with a quick review like we always do. It'll be kind of fun this time because we'll be looking back over the entire year to see the different steps that you've taken. And then we'll look at specifically about how to prepare. We know that many of you are going to need funding to implement some of the activities that you've planned. So we're going to talk very briefly about some fundraising tips. And then we'll also be looking at today an annual calendar, your budget for next school year, and then also a special kind of timeline chart called a Gantt chart that will kind of put the bigger steps of your implementation plans into a chart form. Then we'll talk about what happens after RSC. So one thing we want to introduce you to in more detail today is the new Guiding All Kids initiative, which is designed to come after the RSC year. So we'll do an overview and then just make sure that you know where the application is if you're interested in doing that. And then finally, we'll end up with the few final tasks that schools that are interested in applying for the Gold Star and RAMP awards need to complete. So that's the agenda, and we'll just get started. So in the review, just a reminder that in RSC, the focus of the school counseling programs is to help schools make sound choices in areas that impact academic success. And so as we started designing the program this year, we were keeping in mind that we wanted to design a school counseling program that would help kids make better choices, and as a result of those choices, achievement would go up. So at the beginning of the year, we just started working that pyramid backwards. We started out with the achievement goals in your school improvement plan, and then we figured out, okay, what are the choices that kids need to make? And those actually became your program goals. We listed all of the choices that kids would need to make in order to be successful at your school. And then we narrowed those down into your priority goals, which were the goals that you wanted to focus on first. Then once we knew what the priority goals were, we looked to see why kids weren't making those choices. And finally, you designed a school counseling program to be delivered primarily by school counselors that would help those students make the choices that you want them to make in your building. So, okay. So again, in the process, we started out just getting ready. You put together a steering team, you collected data, you did some self-studies, we did an introduction, we did some visioning, you set goals, you expanded your resources, set priority goals, you did your root causes, identified your activities, and now we're to preparation. So again, we're specifically looking at this month at a program, an annual calendar, a program calendar, your Gantt chart, which is kind of the broad strokes of implementation, an annual budget, and we'll look at fundraising for those of you who need to raise funds, and then we're also going to look at some guidance lessons. So right now, these are the parts of your plan, of your program that you have in place. So if you think about it, this is a strategic plan. You have a vision, you have goals, you have a resource expansion plan, you have priority goals, root causes. You identified the delivery methods that you want to put in place next year, and then the activities that will fall under those different delivery methods. So we're ready now to go from the plan to the action or to the implementation. So we're talking about then preparation, and again, it's going to be calendar, Gantt chart, budget, and fundraising. Okay, so looking at preparation, we'll start with some fundraising tips. Now, when we speak with counselors, we find that there are a lot of counselors who have absolutely no funds set aside for their program. Every time they want to purchase something, they have to go to their principal and they say, may I please buy this? And then the principal says yes or no. So other school counselors have a set budget, just like the math department has a budget or the English language arts department has a budget, that, there's a set aside amount of funds that you're able to spend each year that you can count on, and then you figure out how to spend that money. For, I think, almost all school counselors, there's never enough money. And so fundraising becomes part of our jobs. And it may be that, you want to take kids to visit a college campus and you don't have the funding, so you're going to the Kiwanis Club. Or you may be applying for some funds from your local foundation. Or you may be applying for grant funding. So what I want to talk about today is looking at grant funding from foundations, from folks who's, it's their business to give out funding, and to really talk about, like, what are they looking for and how do you set yourself up so that if you're applying to a funder like Lumina or Lilly, that you're more likely to receive funding from them. So this is the way that we do it, and over the last 20 years, we've been fairly successful at raising funding. Most nonprofit, well, like 95% of nonprofits go out of business, and we've been around for 20 years. So we've done a decent job of being able to find funding, and here's what I do. So I find a lot of funding sources in two different places. One is the Foundation Center. That's kind of a clearinghouse of information about grant makers, just kind of, what they're interested in and what kind of grants they give and things like that. And then there's another place called GuideStar that gathers financial information about foundations and charities. And that's just another place where if I want to find out more about Lumina or Lilly or whoever, I'll go to GuideStar and kind of look up a little bit about that organization. Now, some tips in this. When you look at these, when you look at big funders like Lumina or Lilly, you're going to see in their publications these huge amounts of money that, you'll see grants for $2 million, and you're thinking, I only need $300. This maybe isn't a good fit. But one tip is just not to be wowed by the size of the foundation's grants. They're probably also making a gazillion other little tiny grants, but they just don't publicize those. There's not enough print space. And the list is long, so they just publicize the big ones. So don't if you're looking for funding and you're seeing that the grants that they're providing are in the $2 million range, I wouldn't be set back by that. Remember that they also are awarding small grants. So another thing you can do to learn about your grant, about a potential funder, and this is something I always do. I think you have to do your homework before you approach a funder. And I always look to see, what kind of assets does that funder have? What kind of past grants have they done? So it may be your community foundation, locally in your county. What kind of grants have they given in the past? Do they have giving priorities listed? Do they tend to give for education or for spiritual endeavors, or what kind of giving do they do? And then who are the contact names? And then usually on a funder's website they'll have guidelines for how to start approaching them if you are seeking funding. So I find that information by going to the funder's website. So I'd go to Lily's website or Lumina's website, read all about the funder, and look at their annual report. I look at that big time. That really tells me a lot about the funder, and you can download those from their website. And then sometimes I look at their tax returns too, just to kind of see, learn just a little bit more about them. The tax return for nonprofit is called a 990, so you'd be looking for their 990 online, and they're published online. So, and then often I'll just do a 5-minute call. I'll call whoever the contact person is listed, and I'll just say, could I have 5 minutes to just see if I'm a good fit for your foundation? And I would say 100% of the time, they say sure. So what I'll do then is I'll just kind of talk about in like 2 minutes worth what our organization is and what I'm seeking funding for, and then I just say, is this a good fit? And If they say yes, then I take the time to fill out an application and go, through that process. If they say no, then I'll say thanks very much. But a lot of times they'll say, no, we're not, but try this other foundation. And then I can call the other foundation, plus I have the advantage of being able to say, so-and-so from Lilly Endowment referred me to you, or, from my community foundation referred me to you. So, yeah, so I think that 5-minute call is a good one. So, okay. Another tip when you're filling out any application for funding is to make sure you follow directions on the app. Apps will usually limit, the instructions will usually limit you to the number of pages. When I first started filling out grant apps, what I did was I would use like a 2-point font in tiny, tiny margins and get 24 pages worth into 12 pages. And what I found later was that if you make it difficult for the funder to read what you're submitting, they'll just stop reading. So I never use smaller than a 10 font, and I may make my margins a little smaller, but not like minuscule. So, okay. And then another mistake that I made in the beginning is when I contacted a funder, I would say, we're interested in doing these 5, 6 things. Is there one that might interest you? And that's not a good idea, because it doesn't show the funder what you're interested in. They want to see where your passion is. So it's much better if you pick one and then just go with that one, the one that you're most passionate about. Another tip, again, a mistake I used to make, is I would send my application to everybody I knew at that organization, and it just made things confusing because, my application was floating around all over the place. I found I'm much better off to just see who the contact person is and then just send it to that one person. They are in charge of processing the applications when they come in, and if you don't follow their chain of command or their process instructions, it just gets all messed up on their end. So, and then the other thing is to be very clear about who your contact person is. So, and again, I used to list on a cover letter, I'd list my name and my principal's name, my superintendent's name, and then the funder didn't know like who to follow up with. So, so you want to make it very clear about who the contact person is regarding your inquiry, and then of course give that person's contact information. Okay, here's another tip. Occasionally, funders will ask our organization to manage grants for them, and this is a problem that we just saw over and over and over again. We'd get grant applications in, and the math would be wrong. And it was such a hassle because it would be like a really good grant application, but then there'd be a math problem. We'd have to send it back and have them fix it and then send it back to us, and it just slowed down everything. So check, double check, triple check your math. Make sure that it's all accurate. Then if you've never written a grant application before, or not very much, I would also find a financial person to check a couple things. And by financial person, that could be your district treasurer or your school treasurer. Anybody who has experience with budgeting. So what you want to ask them to check is the appropriateness of your line items. For example, if you're going to a conference, do you put travel on the professional development line item, or do you put travel on the travel line item? So they can help you make those judgments. And then the other thing I'd ask them to look at is if the amounts that you have put in reflect the real costs of whatever it is you're budgeting. It's not too big of an amount, and it's not too small of an amount. So I know in all of the budgeting that I do, be it for a grant application or when we're trying to put a price tag on something, that we're offering to schools, I budget it to the penny and I do my research. So if I know that, for example, that we're going to have to bring 4 staff members to Indianapolis, when I'm budgeting, I actually, get out Google Maps and figure out how many miles it is for Janet to get to Indianapolis. Then I multiply that times the government rate. So I'm budgeting exactly. I just find that that's really helpful. And it also, if you put in a grant application that's got an amount that looks way too big or way too small, it just kind of sends up red flags, and that makes the funder wonder if you know what you're doing. So again, a financial person, could look at the amounts that you have assigned to different tasks, and be able to, with some experience, be able to say, man, this looks way off, and question you on some of those areas. And then number 3, I mentioned, make sure your figures are realistic. And again, I always do my homework. I never just ballpark a figure. I always just get out. I call companies to say, how much is this 3 reams of paper going to cost that I'm putting in, or whatever. So I know some people just ballpark it, but I just think it's a good rule of thumb to just budget exactly. Okay, so do the math. Then here are some ways to increase your odds of getting your grant application or your funding application to your local community foundation or whoever. These are ways to increase your odds of getting that application approved. First of all, there's 2 things that funders really look for. They want to leverage the funds that they're giving you. So they don't want you to just use those funds and then they're gone and there's nothing that's going to continue after the grant period. So one way to leverage those funds is if you can use those funds that they're giving you to bring in other funds. That's really helpful. So for those of you who have looked at the Lilly RFP, there's parts in it that talks about through the planning phase what contributions are you getting from your partner organizations. And you can list those contributions one of 2 ways. You can say that we actually have been promised that the Kiwanis Club is going to give us $200, or you can say the Kiwanis Club has promised us 6 members to help with this initiative. So it's an in-kind donation. They're not donating time, or they're donating materials and not actually dollars. So again, when bringing in other funds, it doesn't actually have to be money. It could be an in-kind donation. So, okay, then the other thing that funders like, because it helps to leverage, they think it's leveraging their funds, and it is to use your grant funds to make the most out of your schools and your community's resources. In other words, you're using those funds to set up a new organizational structure, or to utilize volunteers to complement the work of professionals, or to develop your program, or to do professional development. So now we have in-house staff that have new skills. So those of you who received the planning grant from Lilly, which I think almost all of our schools have that we're working with right now, that you can see that your planning grant was about doing these things, about setting up a new organizational structure through RSC, about developing the RSC program, and about learning new skills as a counselor in terms of using data, learning about creating a strategic plan. You also have utilized volunteers. You've got your council and your partners who have come in to complement your work as a professional school counselor. So RSC, and then in our continuing initiative, Guiding All Kids, we're really focusing on number 2, to make the most out of the resources that you have. Both of those things are likely to be sustainable. That's why the funders like them. Okay, number 3, keep your wording positive. I always laugh when I'm reading grant applications that we're managing when people say, well, we need this money because our school basically stinks and we need to improve. So you want to keep it, positive. Our school is wonderful, and now we want to be even more wonderful. It's got to be upbeat and positive and full of energy. And then on the other hand, you do also want to say, there are areas where we need to improve, and then you'll list those. But you want to do it in a positive way. So, okay. And then number 4 is you also, to increase your odds of being accepted with a grant application, you want to show support from local organizations. So, and I think that if you guys are applying for, local community foundation funding or Lilly funding or whatever, you now can say, we've got support from all these organizations that have been coming to the table to have these discussions with you. They have donated their time. That's big support. And it's more reliable support than just having somebody's organization's name on a piece of paper. You'll be able to say these organizations came to 3 discussions and gave input and and looked at data. And then you'll be able to say also in any grant that you're writing that that some of those council members also agreed to become partners with you, and that they're going to help you implement the program as a volunteer complementing the work of the professionals in your building. So you'll be able to show, because of the way we did RSC, a lot of local organization support, which I think is going to be very, very helpful to any grant that you're applying for, but especially those of you who are applying for the Lilly implementation grant. So, okay. Then, patience and persistence. It might take 3 months to get a response. If there are a lot of applications coming in for a grant app, it will take 3 months. And again, just using the Lilly Counseling Implementation Grant as an example, those grant applications are due in May, and you're not going to hear back until September. So, and that's because the funders really do take their time to read every single word and to figure out where their money will be the best spent. So it takes some time. I mean, it's just how it works. So, and I can tell you, the one that surprised me the most, the largest grant that our organization ever got, I went in and made a pitch and never heard back from the organization for 7 years. And 7 years later, they called and said, remember when we talked, we have some money available, we were wondering if you might like it. So, biggest grant we ever got. So you never know, you're planting seeds, and even if it doesn't sprout right then, it might sprout later. So now, what if you're not awarded a grant? We all get turned down on grants. I mean, it's just part of it. And I can almost guarantee to most people that the first time you apply for a grant, you probably won't get it. So we have to make that into a learning opportunity. So if you get turned down by your community foundation or Lumina or Lilly or anyone, we need to remember that it's not a reflection on the quality of your program. There's a whole lot of other stuff that goes into that decision. Some of it's based on luck. If you happen to apply, in at the moment that they just ran out of money, it may have been a really good application, and they may be just saying, shoot, I wish that application had come in a week earlier because we really wanted to fund them. But the timing just wasn't good. Remember that the door is not permanently closed. And what I always do is call the funder and just ask, just tell them, I'm trying to make this into a learning situation. Could you help me understand what I might do differently next time, and I'm wondering why my application was rejected. So what will happen when you ask that question is, if you are a good fit, but there's just something else going on, the timing or whatever, the funder may ask you to come back with another proposal in their next funding period or something like that. So you may get asked to come back. And then a lot of times what will happen, and quite often when I've talked with funders, is they'll say, that's really not a good fit for us, but call this person at this foundation. I think that they may be interested in you. So you get some leads on other funders. So now, I know some of you are thinking, I'm a school counselor. It's my superintendent or my principal or whatever that applies for grants. There's no reason it can't be you. I would just talk with your principal, tell them you need some funding, tell them you'd like to talk to the Kiwanis Club to ask for some funds to support a program, and see what they say. There's a lot of counselors across the state that actively seek funding and get it. So finally, when you're applying for grants, I think a good thing to remember is that it's all about relationships. I like this quote: from the beginning to end, grant seeking is all about good communication. It really comes down to relationships and getting to know people. That's especially why I like to call people after I get turned down from a grant or funding request, because then I can, develop that relationship more, and they see that I'm eager and I'm wanting to learn, and it's just a good relationship building thing. So, anyway, so we want to talk a little bit about funding. The line items that we have set up a budget tool for you, and these are the line items that we're using. I actually got to sit down with the folks from Lilly a couple weeks ago and went over these line items with them, and they are not having prescribed line items, but gave these a glance and said fine. The one thing I wanted to mention to you in any grant application that you're turning in is that to be sustainable, it probably cannot involve funding for personnel and fringe benefits. The funder will always be worried that even if you have a promise for funding, that promise is going to fall through, and then the whole program's dead if it's person dependent. So I think that's a red flag, personnel and fringe benefits. I would recommend not putting funding in a grant application for those things. That's just my opinion. Where I see school counselors mostly needing funding is a small amount of money for materials and supplies, so that you can back up a little bit the meetings that you might have to further develop things. But I think most of your funding in any grant application is going to be for meeting expenses. And then if you're developing a program to provide stipends for people in your school that are actually doing the development, so that you can pay them for the time that they're spending outside of contract. And I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, if you think about it, you're a school counselor or you're a teacher, you have a full-time job. You can't all of a sudden make hours appear in the school day to be a program developer on top of being a principal or on top of being a school counselor. So we've been really stressing to schools that, to consider providing stipends for people to do program development outside of school hours, especially if it's a huge initiative. That's a legitimate use of funds, and it's no different than a teacher getting paid an extra amount of money to be a basketball coach. This is just an extracurricular assignment that you'd be getting, or just like an independent contractor assignment that you'd be being given to work to develop a program outside of school hours. And then also, if you're developing something that's brand new, to have part of the funds being used for technical support, or in some cases, depending on how big the initiative is, a good chunk of change for technical support. If you're doing something that's foundationally different and comprehensive, it would make sense that would be a large amount of money. So anyway, so those are kind of, what the line items are that we usually use, and where we see most funds being spent. Okay, and I talked about stipends. Okay, so that said, I'm going to pause and see if we have any questions, and then move to the online system to walk through these different tasks for this month. So Debbie, questions?
No questions right now, thanks.
Okay, let's go to the online system, and let's see. Yep. Okay, so here's the process page, and I'm going to scroll down to the step that says, the big section that says prepare to implement. So this video is the video that we're recording right now. And then this verb says review, because the annual calendar is already created. It is a report that is generated when you enter your activities. I'm in demo school. I don't know if I have any activities in. Let me see. Yeah, I do. Oh, no, I don't. So when you put in those activities, the dates on your activities, this calendar will auto-populate those activities behind the appropriate month. So this will be finished. The only thing we need you to do is to submit that you've checked this calendar out and it's all fine and you're ready for Debbie or Janet to review it. If it's not okay, you just need then to go back to the activities and change the dates on those activities. One thing that you might find problematic there is if you put in a lot of dates as to be determined, they may all end up at you may end up with a calendar that has very few things with months associated with it, and then everything's at the end with no dates assigned to it. So you may want to go back now and put some dates in to make that calendar look like you want it to look like. Okay, so that's pretty simple. It's actually already finished. The Gantt report is also pretty simple. I'm going to click enter. This is a new report for us, and I've been really pleased with it. So what this happens is you would put in, when you open this up, there will be no steps listed here. So you're going to add an item, and you just say what you want it to be. Train the second round of teacher advisor program teachers or whatever. And then if it's a big broad step you're going to do next month or next year, you would select the month. Otherwise, you're just going to select the year and then and then hit save. And there it is. So that's how you enter activities into the Gantt report. And then what happens, remember these are broad stroke activities. And then when you go to the Gantt report, it takes those things and it puts them into a timeline. So Gantt charts are kind of a pain to create. That's why I wanted to create an online tool for it. But I think it really shows you like the broad strokes. So you could put every single school counseling activity here, or you could, but a Gantt report usually is more the broad things that you have to do. But you could set that up any way you wanted to. The Lilly RFP requires a Gantt report, a Gantt chart. So this would be where you could create that Gantt chart for your Lilly RFP if you're applying for the implementation funding. The other thing I like to do with Gantt reports is, if this were my school, I would print this report. I'd blow it up on a poster and put it up in our counseling center. Or if I'm looking at a systemic approach involving everybody in the school, I'd put it up in the teacher's workroom. And then I would just check off, or maybe put a little, silver star on the different things as they got completed, just to kind of keep everybody on task. So, okay. So that's the Gantt chart, very easy to create. And then entering your budget. When we're entering the budget, we are going to click here. And this is your budget. And the way it works, when you open it up the first time, this will be all blank. But you can kind of see in demo school what I was trying to show you here. We've put in a stipend for a project manager. The line item, we did the drop down, it was contractual stipends. And then I put in some budget notes. The number of hours that this person was going to be working outside of contract, what the rate would be, and $30 an hour is probably high. It's probably more like probably, I think most schools will tell us that $20 an hour is pretty average, and then then there's going to be benefits on top of that. That would equal about another $5 an hour. But you would check with your school secretary, or I'm sorry, treasurer, to figure out what the hourly rate would be to put on there. And then how much that is each year. We have given you places to put in funding for 4 years. And those of you who are applying for the Lilly grant, you'll want to play that out for 4 years. But if not, if you just want to do a 1-year budget, then just fill in this first column. And then you can see that it totals over here on the right. So, and then just add another budget item. It just gives you a new blank, and then you could say, order you want to purchase, let's say the Good Student Handbook. And you're going to select that this is materials and supplies, and you want a classroom set, so you're going to do 30 at $10 per book, and then then fill out the rest of that and add it in. Okay, so that's the budget. It's pretty easy. One thing I just saw that we're missing here, if you don't have a budget, so let's say that you're in a school where you have to go to the principal every time you want something and ask for funding to purchase it, you won't be able to put in a budget if that's the case. And so instead, we would like you to upload a funding proposal. So that would be either just an email that you've sent to your principal asking for funding for the coming year. You don't know if you're going to get it or not, but you're just asking. Or maybe a letter that you've sent to your community foundation, or maybe the first page of your Lilly grant application, that you're uploading that to us as evidence that you've met this requirement. So we'll put an uploader button in here. Yeah, I'm sorry that's not there right now. It was there, it just kind of disappeared, but we'll get that back. Okay, then this step, if you want to apply for the Lilly implementation grant, that's just going to take you to their website. And then, let me do a refresh on here real quickly. Yeah, and then and that's it, and then the rubric items. So that's it for May. So really, you're just doing this Gantt report and the budget, and that's it. Notice that the due date for these is May 8th. On May 9th, those of you who were working with your districts will start developing their Lilly grant application. And it's really important that you have all this information in by May 8th so that they can estimate. They have a separate report that's going to aggregate all of your budgeting needs. And so they'll look at that at their meeting on May 9th. So make sure that you've got your May 8th meeting, all these deadlines met by May 8th. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to pause, see if we have any questions, and then I'm going to move into, okay, what comes after RSC. So these are the last steps in redesigning school counseling. Okay, Debbie, do we have questions?
Yes, Julie asks, I don't have a department budget, so for the budget item, don't use the Lilly budget, just upload the first page to say we're applying?
Yeah, somehow you just need to show a document that shows that you're applying. So I think if you just put in, we don't need the whole grant application. I think if you just put in the first page, or maybe even Lilly does a cover letter, maybe if you just upload the cover letter, that would be evidence that you are requesting funding, and that would meet that requirement for Gold Star and RAMP. Yeah, good question.
And that's it, thanks.
Okay, yeah, good question, thank you. Okay, so now let's look at what comes next. There's two things that we would like you to consider. One is going to be finishing out what you have to do for Gold Star in RAMP. And again, let me back up. Everything that we've done up until now is going to finish out RSC and is what your district needs if you're going to apply for the Lilly grant. You know what you're going to do, and now we're thinking how much is it going to cost and what's your timeline. So that will finish out everything that you need to have in place before applying for the Lilly grant, all the thinking, the planning phase. So there's two things left that we want to talk about. One is what would come next. From our perspective, what would be the next logical thing to do after RSC? And then also there's a couple odds and ends that we need to do for the Gold Star and RAMP awards that I'll cover right at the end. Okay, so I now have a lot of details about Guiding All Kids. We've been kind of talking about this all year and kind of getting you ready to do this if you wanted to, but of course this is totally optional. There's no requirement to do anything after RSC. Okay, so Guiding All Kids is, first of all, not an add-on program. And this is really important. In education, so much of the time when there's funding available or when someone wants to have a new idea, you just add it on to what you're already doing. It's just an add-on activity. When we've been reading and reviewing some of the Lilly grant applications, what we're starting to see is a collection of unrelated activities that the district is asking for money for. And there's no coordination between activities. There's no common direction that all of the activities are going in. It's just a hodgepodge of activities. So one of the things we wanted to really emphasize is to not think about Guiding All Kids that way. Guiding All Kids is not an add-on activity that you would do in addition to everything else. This is a totally different way of looking at student guidance and counseling. Okay, it is a system. So it's a way to get others to be worker bees in the delivery of your program. So remember when we talked about how one of the things funders like to see is how volunteers can be used to assist the professionals in the business or in the school. This is what we're doing. We're like in my program when I did this, we had 2 school counselors, but we had 50 plus other adults that were delivering our program. They were our worker bees. And when we did that, we were able to provide so many more services for kids. I mean, it was incredible. And then after we got it set up with our initial funding, it sustained with no funding. So, okay, but so we really, when you're thinking about Guiding All Kids, we really need to think that out of the box here. This is not an additional program. This is a system. Okay, so this is a system of coordinated initiatives. So the one at the top here, these are the traditional counselor activities. When you came out, as you're coming out of RSC, this is what you have in place. You figured out what the choices are that you want kids to make and what the activities are that are going to be done by the counselors to help kids make those choices. A little bit, we've jumped over here to community organizations. A little bit, we've invited your council members to become partners in helping you deliver activities. And that's something we've always done in RSC is, we've spent a little bit of time talking with schools about, let's expand the number of hands that you have at the table, the number of worker bees there are by getting some community organizations to help you. But now in Guiding All Kids, we're going to kind of go hog wild with this. We're going to bring in even more community organizations. We're going to drop a teacher advisor program in, so teachers are delivering guidance curriculum. We're going to integrate guidance with academic classrooms, and we're going to have parent-based activities. And then all of these initiatives are all focused on the same point, helping kids make those choices that you want them to make. Collectively, all of these groups are responsible for helping students make the targeted choices. So we're all working together in a very coordinated way. I put the word other down here because I think that as we start this journey together, schools will come up with delivery models that we haven't even thought of. Like just today, I was remembering back a school that we worked with 15 years ago that had a coach-based a guidance initiative. It was all kind of centered around NCAA eligibility requirements, but they actually had the coaches do guidance lessons with their kids. And they all did that. It was really cool. And they they measured the percentage of students who were NCAA eligible and watched that number go up. I mean, it was just awesome. So there's all kinds of other groups in your community that as we work together will maybe come into this other other box. So we just don't know. So, okay. So now, what will this program look like when it's all created? So in the first year, I'm going to jump, I jumped ahead of myself. A couple other things. As we start getting our kids, we're making these assumptions. One is that you're going to have, the schools will have funding either from Lilly or from other source for 4 years, and that the schools will sustain Guiding All Kids after 4 years with no funding, that educators will not have time during the school day to develop Guiding All Kids, because this is a major initiative. This is not a little add-on. This is fundamentally looking at doing things differently. And that money then will be needed to pay the educators stipends for the time that they spend developing Guiding All Kids outside of contract hours. So, and then finally, what we think, we know Guiding All Kids is going to be highly sustainable because it's not funding dependent. We're using the money to develop programming, to develop leadership, and once all that's developed, the thing will just sustain by itself. Okay, so Guiding All Kids, there's going to be 2 parts to it. The first part is about strategic planning, and then the second part is about activity delivery. So the first part you've already done. So where some schools will spend a year doing strategic planning, you're going to skip this step and move right on to activity delivery. So, so it will work like this. So for a school that has not done Gold Star, so if there are any other schools in your district or that you know of that would start this that have not done Gold Star or are ready to renew their Gold Star, they would start out and do this year of RSC. It's not going to be like your year because we're going to take the entire year to do it, so it'll be at a much slower pace than what you guys went through. So then in second year, they would put together the GAC framework and beef up their community-based guidance initiative. In year 3, we'll drop in a teacher advisor program, and in year 4, they'll drop in the academic integration and the parent-based. So for you guys, though, since you already have Gold Star, or you will have Gold Star in next fall, we'll drop out this first year. We're doing that because you already have an up-to-date strategic plan. And we'll just move everything up and split these 2 initiatives into 2 different years. So your plan will look like this. If you wanted to be involved in what we think is logically the next step after RSC, it would be that you would do this. You'd come in first year with us and you'd do Guiding All Kids and the community-based, then the teacher advisor program, then TAP, and then we'd continue teacher advisor, add in academic integration, and then do parent-based. Okay. When it's all developed, it looks like this, and this is what we'll do in the first year. We'll develop this plan. So we'll take each of your choices, turn in homework, and then we'll really brainstorm what can everybody do to help with that. So it may be that the math teachers say, we can do a math lesson, a quick math lesson with all of their, say it's a high school with all the 9th graders, on how much a 0 impacts them, a GPA calculation, how much a 0 impacts that more than a 50% F. A 0 F has a huge impact. We can, in the teacher advisor program, they could be teaching kids how to do a homework log. And then in the parenting part, we could put in a unit to help parents understand how to help their kids set up a homework log and then set up the expectation that parents would check that every night. So you can see here are 3 initiatives that are going to impact turn-in homework, and the counselor is not involved at all. So after the setup of the organizational structure to the development of all these materials in the first 4 years, this just smoothly goes on. And it's just happening, and it will help kids make this choice and doesn't take any of your time. So this actually was very similar to the program that I did at Indian Creek. So we want kids to come to school. In the teacher advisor program, we do a lesson on personal responsibility. A community organization puts in an incentive for perfect attendance. The counselors maybe do group counseling for truant kids. And when the teacher advisors are doing personal goal setting with their students that are assigned to them. The kids that have poor attendance, they're really pushing those kids to have an attendance goal, and then they're monitoring that goal each week. So yeah, so this is kind of how it looks. And then once it's all set, in year 1, we'd be working to develop these community initiatives. In year 2, we'd be working to develop the TAP guidance curriculum. In year 3, we'd work on the academic integration. And then in year 4, we'd work on the parent part. We will give you an entire set of guidance activities and lesson plans for a teacher advisor program beginning in kindergarten and going in up to 12th grade. There'll be 9 lesson plans per year. You can just use our lesson plans, or you can develop your own. We'll also give you in year 4 an online site where parents can go to do activities with sitting down side by side with their kids. Some of them will be activities and others will just be parenting information, like how do you look at a 4-year high school course plan. So everything that you need, we're trying to do all the grunt work so that if you like our stuff, you don't have to do that grunt work, like develop lesson plans. But if you don't like our stuff, you can develop your own. Just, totally up to you. So, okay, so that's what the framework looks like. I'm just going to fly through these. You can go back and look later if you really want to look at some examples. But these are all different, these are real organizations that I've worked with that have contributed a guidance lesson or done something to, to help with the delivery of the school counseling program. These are examples of academic integration that we did at our school. So you can see I was in a high school, so they're all high school examples. But there's just tons of places between the family and consumer science curriculum, the health curriculum, math, English, that you can integrate guidance activities into the academic content. Parent activities, just all kinds of things that, and again, we'll be setting this up for you. So all you have to do is really advertise it, or you could, you could bring groups of parents in. You could have like explore careers with your child on a Saturday morning. Bring the kids in. And maybe it's not you bring them, and maybe it's a community organization, and the parents sit down at a computer with their kid, they go over the career interest inventory, they do a career interest inventory, and then go over the results. So you could bring parents and kids in to do these activities, or just publicize it so that parents can do it at home with their kids. Teacher advisor, just a couple things I'll say on each of these slides. One here is that in the second year, we'll help you set up the format for a teacher advisor program. It does not have to look like this. You might do just 4 guidance lessons the entire year, maybe once a marking period, or maybe even once a semester. They could be activities that are 20 minutes long, but those are all the decisions that will help you make in year 2. In terms of the content of those activities, in my program, we put almost all of our guidance lessons in our teacher advisor program. And that allowed us to get in a gazillion lessons that I didn't have time to do because the teachers were implementing them. We dropped some academic advising 4 times a year. The kids met with their academic advisors to go over report cards. They got together with their teacher advisor to go over report cards and set goals individually. And then just relationship building, hobby day, having picnics, that kind of stuff with their advisory group. So, okay, so now, if you decide to do GAC, we'll expand your steering, well, no, not expand, we're going to change your steering team. We want there to be an overall project manager, and then there will be a coordinator for each delivery method. And then we'll support each one of those people. So if we ask them to do professional development with a group, we'll provide them a professional development module. Everything will be there. Steering team development, the one thing I want to mention on this screen is that instead of webinars, all of the professional development will be workshops. There will be 3 to 7 per year. They'll be in Indianapolis. So that will take you out of the building some, but I can promise you it'll be time well spent. In a workshop format, what we always do, so you'll come into the room, there'll be 12 different school teams there. First thing we do is get in a big circle and we do school-to-school sharing. If a school has a concern or they've got a hurdle in front of them, then everybody goes into the problem-solving mode, and we're brainstorming. All this 11 different schools are brainstorming, what could that one school do? So that's really, really powerful. We all celebrate together. Then we'll do presentations. These presentations and workshops will be a lot different than how they are in webinars. In webinars, the only thing we have time to do is talk about next steps. But in our workshops, we'll also talk about the change process, the stages of change, the stages of group development, what resistance is likely to come up at every step, how do we head off that resistance before it happens. And the presentations will be very little of us talking and a lot of team time. And then at the end of the day, it's just unstructured team time where your team can talk about whatever it needs to talk about so that when they get home, they can hit the ground running. So workshops instead of webinars, submission reviews, active monitoring, unlimited on-call support. In addition to the coordinators for each of the delivery models, we'll suggest a TAP grade level coordinators and data collection coordinator and a documentation coordinator. These can be the same people as the steering team members. It's just, again, just a different job delegation. And all of these folks we think should have stipends for the evening work or the weekend work that they're going to put in to creating this intense, foundationally different school counseling delivery system. Note too that we're not doing this with 2,000 schools across the state like we want to with redesigning school counseling. This is for a small number of schools that really want to do things differently in their buildings. So here's our deliverables. I think I've mentioned most of them. I just kind of fly through these. And then the enrollment fee, this is expensive because these amounts are just covering our costs. Matter of fact, in both of them, I think it's a few dollars under our costs. We just wanted to round it off. So, when you bring people to a workshop, which is a wonderful format for professional development, that's expensive. I mean, we're feeding you, we're providing materials. Our tech support's going to be much more intense and hands-on than it has been with the webinars. It just gets expensive. So for schools like you that are receiving your Gold Star in 2017, the price would be $7,500 per year. And again, that is just covering our costs. And then that, of course, 4 times that amount would be $30,000 for the 4 years. So if there are more than 12 schools coming from your district, we can lower that price a little. So if that's the case, have somebody from your district give me a call. Timeline, the applications are actually, we'd like them in by Friday. We have a lot of applications in already. So I'll show you the application in a second, but please, I'm sorry, I said by Friday, Thursday. Applications in by Thursday. It's a really quick application, and then we'll let you know on Friday if your school has been accepted into Guiding All Kids. Again, when everything else is equal between schools, we look at which application came in first. So the sooner you can get an application in, the better. And we really hope that this, for a lot of you, that this is we're kind of looking forward to just continuing with some of you, that this is just a really smooth transition right out of RSC into Guiding All Kids. Okay, and then for the schools that are accepted, we'd like to meet with your grant writer on May 4th to talk about how to get Guiding All Kids into your Lilly grant application, and also to give you some specific tips for things that we think Lilly will be looking for in their grant applications. Then next fall, the one thing we want to say is that if your school does not get a Lilly grant, then you are not obligated to pay us anything. However, if you don't get that grant, we'd like to have an opportunity for 2 weeks to work with you on finding the funds from another source. So we'll talk about getting funds from your community foundation or from a couple of businesses in your county or whatever. So we'll work with you. If you don't get the Lilly grant, we'll kind of figure out what to do after that. But then by the 16th, if there's no funding, then you are not obligated to participate in GAC or submit any funding to us. Okay, the application is here. It's a new website that we're just creating, asainstitute.org/GAK. So it's the same as RSC, but it's GAK. Click that application button, and I'll show you real quickly the application. Yeah, the application looks like this. So you can see it's just kind of fill in the blanks. We just need some contact information. It does ask for a real quick principal statement. I wouldn't worry about that. We just need to be aware that the principal knows what Guiding All Kids is all about and that he thinks that or she thinks it's going to be a good fit for your school. So it can be 50 words. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything big. And then the part that I really want to draw to your attention is this Memorandum of Understanding. We think that we will be wasting your time if we don't follow through with our deliverables, and we think that you will be wasting our time if you don't follow through with doing your tasks. So there's the deliverables that we promise we'll provide, and here are the things that we'd like you to promise that you'd provide, so we're not wasting each other's time. So if you can agree to those things, just fill out the rest of this and then hit submit, and we're good to go. Okay, that said, I'm going to do real quick, and then we'll finish up with Guiding All Kids. I'm sorry, we'll finish up with Gold Star and RSC. I have one poll I want to launch real quickly, and oops, select the poll. Just to give us kind of a heads up, because we're trying to make some decisions. If you could just kind of let us know what is your interest level like right now. So you can just kind of vote real quickly for one of those. So it would be a non-interested, you're on the fence, you've already applied, or you plan to apply. So that would be good. We've got a third of you. Okay. About half of you have voted. Please do everybody vote. If you're on the fence, please feel free to call us, and whatever you need to know from us, we'd be happy to help you with. For example, I had a counselor call me a couple weeks ago that said, I'd like to pull together all the counselors in my district and have you do a webinar just with our district, and we did that. I had another counselor call and said, would you please talk to my superintendent? I'm happy to do that. So, you know, whatever concerns you have, you know, feel free to float those by us, and I'd be happy to respond to whatever for those of you who are on the fence. So for those of you who are planning to apply, the sooner the better. I have a feeling we're going to go to capacity on this pretty quickly. And again, this is not for all schools in the state. It's for a very small number that we believe in. So yeah, so get those applications in. So okay, a few more of you. I'll leave this open a couple seconds, and then we'll talk about Gold Star. And good, we're getting in here. Yeah, so none of this group has applied yet, but we have several dozen applications in. So so good. Okay. Okay, I'm going to close this application. Okay, close, and then good. So now, Debbie, are you seeing my screen again? I always forget to do something.
Yes, we see your screen.
Okay, very good. So the last thing we want to do is talk about, one other thing. We're also just announced this week that we're taking registrations from schools that want to do RSC, but not with Guiding All Kids, just a standalone like you did it this year, except it won't be in 5 months. We'll start in October, we'll finish in May. It'll be at a much leisurely pace than what you guys did. So if any other schools in your district don't want to do Guiding All Kids, but just want to do RSC, or if your district, you know, wants to apply with them too, both of those applications are available at the RSC website, so our address /RSC.